Estimados, muy buenos días. Bienvenidos a una sesión más del Icsr Lab. ¿Me pueden ayudar a confirmar que me escuchan, por favor? Si me pueden poner un mensaje de que se escucha, perfecto, les agradezco. Bienvenidos a todos. Empiezo en español para dar indicaciones generales y iniciamos puntuales porque ya tenemos bastantes asistentes y tenemos a nuestros invitados listos. Entonces, generales, les platico los acuerdos. Recuerden, a los que han asistido a las sesiones, es importante que ustedes mantengan sus audios apagados, también su video. El chat va a permanecer deshabilitado y por favor todas las preguntas pónganlas directamente en la sección de Question and Answer, que lo van a ver ahí. También esta sesión está siendo grabada y recuerden que se va a subir a nuestro canal de YouTube para que ustedes puedan posteriormente revisarla si es de su interés. Y también recuerden que nosotros generamos certificado que les va a llegar por correo electrónico las instrucciones para que ustedes lo puedan descargar. Por otro lado, vamos a tener traducción en vivo porque tenemos invitados de habla inglesa. Entonces, en la parte inferior de sus pantallas, ustedes pueden ver el icono que aparece aquí. Este icono les permite cambiar el idioma. Entonces, yo les pido que ustedes seleccionen. Ahorita estoy yo en el idioma inglés, pero vamos a cambiar en un momento más. Pero sí es importante que ustedes ubiquen este icono y que, escuchen en el idioma de su preferencia. Bueno, dando estas instrucciones muy rápidas, les doy la bienvenida a todos ustedes. This session will be cybersecurity and open access. Welcome to everybody. We are very glad to have now our Vice President, Global Library Relations from Elsevier, that is Wayne Evans. Welcome, Wayne, and thank you very much for all the effort and thank you for being part of this event. Let me tell you that Gwen joined Elsevier in 2020. Gwen spent 7 years as the Executive Director of the State Agency and Library Consortium in Ohio. She held the position of Associate Professor of the Coordinator of Library Information and Technologies at Bowling Green State University until 2012. And also, it's important to mention that she has extensive experience with all types of academic libraries and institutions, including academic contract negotiation in a consortial level. Also, she is maintaining and creating shared collaborative services in a technology-driven environment. So, Wayne, we are very glad to have you here. And please join me in the conversation. And thank you for the effort.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and I'm really glad you can join us. We're going to start with cybersecurity in the library context. Again, I'm Gwen Evans, and I'm very fortunate today to be joined by 2 librarians for this section of Elsevier Live from different universities to discuss their experiences with cybersecurity or cyber attacks on their library. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. It is not showing. Can you see my presentation?
If you would change to presentation mode.
Presentation, okay, you see that. All right.
Excellent. Now we can set. Yes.
Hold on, that's not the right one. Hold on, sorry. It wouldn't be a virtual presentation if there wasn't a problem.
Yes, of course. Don't worry. I can remember in the meantime to all the attendees that you can change the language. Please see the image of the world and set interpretation. You can change the language if you prefer, English or Spanish.
Okay, so cybersecurity threats have become increasingly common both in and outside of the research enterprise. One only has to follow the news to see how serious the recent DarkSide ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline was for the Eastern United States. Cybersecurity attacks are something to which the education sector is unfortunately particularly vulnerable. According to a recent article in the Chronicle of Higher Education, universities affected by these massive attacks in the last year in the US only have included the University of Colorado Boulder, University of Utah, University of Miami, the Harvard Business School, the University of California at Davis, and Stanford University's Medical School. The National Cybersecurity Center in the UK places the education sector as the third largest target for attacks, ahead of retail. This is due to the fact that most universities routinely store a tremendous amount of personal data. Not long ago, the City of London Police issued a statement specifically warning universities of a threat posed by the paper sharing site Sci-Hub. Sci-Hub obtains academic papers through a variety of malicious means, such as the use of phishing emails to trick university staff and students into divulging their login credentials. Given this threat, London Police went so far as to advise IT departments to block the website on their network in order to mitigate the security risk to the institutions and their students, faculty, and staff. A number of institutions, Manchester University and University College London, did so. In 2019, the Washington Post reported on the US Justice Department's investigation into Sci-Hub, which includes both criminal and national security intelligence gathering implications, as the question is whether Sci-Hub is tied to Russian military intelligence. Weak defenses on campuses can and do invite attacks, and many IT organizations are instituting regular security audits that may disrupt service or end in a ban on particular core applications that libraries depend on. There are some complex and vexing issues around securing library and other systems. Transparency, confidentiality, and privacy concerns must be balanced with the IT infrastructure's need to protect campus and personal data by building protective systems. Service disabling attacks that implicate the libraries can come from very sophisticated sources. In my previous role as the executive director of the state library agency Ohiolink, I once got a call from the governor's office asking why one of our on-premise library-specific software servers was trying to dial North Korea. On the other hand, service disabling events involving a variety of cybercrime can also be on a much smaller scale. As the head of library IT in one university I worked for, an embezzlement arrest resulted in significant disruption as the fraud involved eBay, and library servers, hard drives, and applications were seized or disabled until the investigation was concluded. Library operations are now so woven into other digital and network services on campus that attacks or breaches can have profound effects on all library operations and personnel. The first step is awareness of the issues and the very real implications for libraries and our users. These problems can't be solved in isolation. It requires collaboration among service and data providers, librarians, and the IT organizations on campus. I am delighted to bring to you today the experiences of two librarians who will give their personal and institutional experiences with cybersecurity related attacks. We'll end with some recommendations on what librarians could do right now to prepare for service continuity in the event of a cyber attack, and then we'll answer your questions. Our two speakers today are Juan Denzer, engineering and computer science librarian from Syracuse University Libraries. He has a Master of Library and Information Science from Buffalo University and a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from Binghamton University. At Syracuse, he provides recommendations on security and enhancements for their Discovery Layer Summon. Before Syracuse, he was the electronic resources librarian at SUNY Oswego, managing access to e-resources. He has also served as the system administrator for Binghamton University Libraries, where he worked on developing easy proxy scripts to combat breaches from Sci-Hub users. He's presented on digital security at Electronic Resources and Libraries Conference and the Charleston Library Conference, and has written about security in computers in libraries, protecting content from hackers, how one institution went from most hacked to 0 breaches. Our second speaker is Kristina Vela Bisbee, Journalism and Government Information Librarian, Columbia University. She's also a lecturer for the School of Information Sciences at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and is the liaison to the Department of Political Science and the Columbia Journalism School. She provides collection development, programming, research support, and outreach within the Science, Engineering, and Social Sciences Division of Columbia University. Most recently, she's presented on topics of civic engagement, public data, and applying journalistic methods to scholarly communication. Juan, I'll stop sharing my screen and you can start us off.
Thank you, Gwen. And I'm going to just quickly share my screen here. Let me just bring this up. And hopefully everyone can see my presentation. So thank you for having me. And I'm going to be talking about securing Easy Proxy, a case study when I was working at Binghamton University, combating the Sci-Hub problem with IEEE. So, let's see here. Okay. So when I was at Binghamton University back in 2016, 2017, I had worked as the library IT staff. At the time, we were going through an interim director, and we had a system administrator that had resigned, and I was still doing the help desk support. And then in 2016, 2017 transition, we had a new director of library IT, and then I took on the role as system administrator. And one of the reasons why I kind of talk about this is because a lot of what happens, especially with cybersecurity in libraries, a lot of institutions don't necessarily have a dedicated IT staff or librarian working kind of together to kind of protect ourselves from cybersecurity. So at the time, even though Binghamton University is a R1 institution, we still did not have a lot of the IT support that bigger institutions like Syracuse University have to combat this problem. So I'm going to talk a little bit again about the issues I had and how I kind of combated this. So a little background on the system administrator. And this is important to kind of understand, especially when thinking about IT and libraries and security. So the system administrator at Binghamton University, which was the job I had, my primary duties were managing 14 servers. I was also a project manager for a new product that we were implementing that we had purchased. I managed and migrated 11 virtual servers, and this was all in the period of 2 years, which at the same time I was combating this kind of problem with Sci-Hub and cybersecurity. I was also a project member for the Rosetta migration. We were migrating our servers from physical servers to virtual servers. And I was managing all the library IT servers, including Easy Proxy. And then my second duties was providing help desk support and purchasing recommendations. So all of this was going on, which is a huge workload. And a lot of times, this stuff that involves security and with Easy Proxy and securing access for students was kind of getting pushed back because all these other things were on the front end. So as a result, what was happening was that we were getting all these kind of attacks, and we were being contacted by IEEE, and they kept shutting us down, or rather they kept suspending our access, our university access, until we found the problem. And the issue was that every time there was a breach in security, it required me to kind of stop what I was doing, search numerous logs to try to find which account was being compromised, shut down the account temporarily, notify the student or staff member or faculty, and let them know that their account has been compromised and restricting their access. And then what I would have to do is I would have to contact IEEE and tell them that it was secured, and then they would turn on our access again. So from all this kind of breach, and so all of this kind of had me struggling with trying to keep up with all my other duties, and then being able to keep on top of this security breach. So that's why I developed an automated script to kind of do this in the background, so that I wouldn't necessarily have to search all of these logs. And as I mentioned before, this is kind of the workflow of the breach, of how it gets reported by a student and goes to our electronic resources librarian. And what was also difficult at Binghamton is our electronic resource librarian didn't have necessarily anything to do other than just report an issue, as far as they had nothing to do with actually securing anything. They weren't going through any data logs, which is a lot different in smaller institutions. When I worked at SUNY Oswego, since I was the e-resources librarian, I actually did all of that as well. So I was doing both the e-resources as a librarian and the security part of IT. So, but at Binghamton University, it was separated. So as I mentioned before, what was happening is that we were getting breached, and people were, compromising accounts, and they were stealing. And you can see by this chart here, you can see the kind of spikes that were going on, and you could see the number of downloaded here PDFs or resources that were being downloaded. I think there's a kind of an anomaly here on this huge spike, but these are what were being reported from December 2016. And you'll notice here in this graph that prior to that, 2017, as we're reporting, we saw these spikes in what was being breached. But then when I implemented this special script that I wrote that automated everything, you'll notice here that the breaches went to nearly zero, because what I was able to do was I was able to find out where the breach was, secure the hole, or rather clear up the breach before it had time to reach IEEE, which they would in turn then suspend our account. So this minimized that period to where IEEE was notified, and then they would suspend our account. So this helped us not have our account suspended, and of course it would keep the access flowing, which is what is important for libraries, right? That every time our account was suspended, access was suspended for students, staff, and faculty. And then what would happen is they couldn't have access, obviously, and that was costing us money. So like I said, you can tell by this chart here that we had these spikes. And when it reached that point where I implemented the script in 7 of 2017, you'll notice that it started to drop, which was a huge benefit on my end here. So as I mentioned before, I would look through the logs looking for the account. I would block the user and then contact the user, and then send IT a request to reset the password and look into possible things. So one of the things that I realized that I had to do was to be proactive, to monitor these logs, manually, but I implemented a automated script to do that, which helped me. So the automated script, as it worked, was fairly simple. And basically, it would search the log files for a unique identifier that IEEE was able to embed into their system so that they could track, or rather, they could catch somebody accessing their resources or accessing their system without authorization. So that unique identifier was crucial for me in developing this script, because I was able to search for those logs, find that special identifier that would identify the account that was compromised. I would flag it. And this, again, is all done in an automated script. So I wasn't actually looking through any, log files myself. It would flag the IP address with the account. And then both user account and IP address would be blocked in our Easy Proxy blacklist files. And then the system would automatically restart Easy Proxy, which would just take a second. And then it would notify the library IT through an email. So I would get an email that would say this account was compromised and this email account was, or this IP address was compromised. And then I would notify the user and have them change their password. And then the other important thing that was really crucial to the script, which was really important for IEEE, was the system would automatically email the IP address that was compromised so that they could blacklist it on their end. And they appreciated that approach, because that is what allowed them to automatically say, okay, we blocked that IP, and then there's no need for us to suspend your account. And so the system I could schedule to run at intervals, which I chose every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes, this system or this script was looking through the log files to kind of catch these breaches. So basically, it was kind of like a cat and mouse kind of thing going on. But again, it really cut down the amount of time that was needed as versus the manpower used to manually look through the scripts. I know that the previous system administrator, he would take probably a day or two during the week. In the morning, he would look through all these files, log files, and he would spend hours in his day, like maybe 3 or 4 hours a day, just looking through all these log files, which really was a lot of manpower that really took up a lot of time. So I kind of cut that down significantly by running these kind of scripts. And you can see here, I showed you that previous one chart, but here are actual numbers. And you can see here that we had these kind of high number downloads. That was really significantly high, because for our institution, which was part of IEEE's policy to suspend us. But you'll notice here, after in August of 2017, there were no breaches that were being reported. So that, again, allowed IEEE to not suspend our account and helped us significantly. Since then, I don't know, since I've left the institution, I don't know if they're still running this script. There have been some enhancements with Easy Proxy, but I know as of, I believe 2019, they were still running this script. And this script was also kind of adopted by others at IEEE, and they ported it for another system, because this was written for Windows systems, and Easy Proxy runs on both Windows and Linux. So someone had ported my script to run on a Linux system, so they could run on different servers that manage Easy Proxy. And that's basically what I have on that. And I will stop sharing now.
Thank you, Juan. And now, Christina, would you like to tell your experience?
Hi, just quick audio check. Are folks able to hear me okay?
Yes, Christina.
Yes, wonderful, thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Kristina Vela Bisbee. I'm the Journalism and Government Information Librarian at Columbia University. I have a little bit of a head cold, so I apologize if my throat is a little scratchy. So in my current position, I support the social sciences and specifically the Department of Political Science. In 2019, hackers attempted to gain access to and alter military intelligence that was provided to Columbia through our library subscriptions. They did this by impersonating a Columbia student and using the library's various channels for research support to gain access to and to try to manipulate those records. So in other words, the very channels that we use to make ourselves accessible to our users, virtual reference, email reference, web forms on our website, our reliance on these channels are what made us vulnerable to this attack. This database was also prominently featured in our library guides and our publicly indexed website. And because it was not something that libraries typically subscribe to, it was something that sort of stood out compared to some of the other run-of-the-mill academic databases that you might expect. So I can't say which database this was, but like I said, it's not your typical library vendor. This is an industry database. So it's very useful for our faculty who are experts in military intelligence or international affairs, but probably wouldn't be as useful for your typical undergrad studying politics or government. But if your library serves a law school or a law firm, a business school or a hospital or medical school, this is something that could definitely happen to you, especially if you're providing specialized resources in that field. So in 2019, the libraries learned that somebody was claiming to be a student and was trying to access their database. They did this by actually contacting our vendor directly and saying that they were a student and they were having trouble accessing the database. Can we please help them? So we were first made aware of this attack through the vendor that we were working with. In an email that was CC'd between myself, the vendor, and this student, it was disclosed that I was the primary contact for relations between the database and this university. I was responsible for, getting the subscription renewed every year, for doing any sort of instructional sessions, and then also offering specialized research support with this resource. So in a separate email between myself and the vendor, they disclosed they thought that this was a hacker who was spoofing the university's IP address. For those who maybe aren't aware, spoofing is the process of imitating one's IP address to gain access to something that's otherwise inaccessible. It's what libraries will often use to verify someone's affiliation and provide access, and it often works in conjunction with Easy Proxy, as Juan had mentioned earlier. So we're fairly sure that this is how the hackers gained access to an email account from this Columbia student. It's similar to Juan, my position is very diversified. I work with a lot of different people and wear a lot of different hats throughout the day. So it was difficult for this experience to get my full attention until they really made it impossible for me to ignore them. So first, once they sort of recognized that I was the school contact for this database, they began emailing me directly and asking me if I could share images with them. Can I explain what's wrong with their access? Can I get them a new password? So I ignored these requests, which is what I was instructed to do by our IT department. But then they began emailing other librarians and dropping my name. So these weren't automated emails. It was very much like a fishing expedition where they would find other librarians on our website and say, Hi, so I have been speaking with Kristina, the librarian over in political science, and I'm trying to gain access to this database. She hasn't responded to my email yet. Do you think you could help me? So I have seen my fair share of trolls and hackers, but this was like very much on a different level for me. They would typically identify themselves as an affiliate. They went so far as to create a fake student ID, and then they would drop my name and make a request. So I have a copy here of the ID card that was created. And so you can see that this is a pretty, like if you perhaps are new to the university, or perhaps you're a student or an intern, this is a pretty convincing, ID. Some of these requests included high resolution images of aircraft carriers, maps of military bases. There were several requests that included trying to change information in the database, technical specifications for drones and for surveillance devices, that were being used in the Middle East. I also have another link here for as sort of an example of the kind of requests they were making. So in this image here is sort of a grainy picture of a battleship, and they're requesting a more high-def image. They're saying, for whatever reason, my computer, it's not able to download the high definition, resolution of this. I need to see what sort of drones are like on the top of this ship. Can you send me the high def resolution? So I want to reiterate here that academics are not the primary user of this database. It's really defense contractors and security intelligence firms. So espionage seems like a pretty clear intention here, to gain access to sensitive information about weapons and surveillance, or to spread false or misleading information about the defense capacities capacities of certain countries or regions. So they used this sort of same sort of script or formula across the library system. So they were emailing individual librarians, they were emailing different campus libraries, of which we have about between 20 and 25 different locations, and then filling out our online reference help form. At one point, and this was sort of the most chilling experience for me, they were on, and I was on, was their usage of chat reference. So they were speaking to a librarian live and troubleshooting access in real time. So we have a very decentralized library system. And so some of these attempts came pretty close to the security breach, especially when the hacker was speaking with students or staff who don't normally work with patrons in their subject area, and therefore may not have recognized this as a threat. So to sort of sum up, these hackers had a combination of institutional knowledge and technical skills at their disposal. I received probably about 20 individual referrals from this same user through a variety of channels across campus. So, most of the time, librarians would just direct these referrals to me. This was over the course of about 2 weeks. Once they realized that I wasn't going to be, responding or giving them the access that they wanted, they then started creating new user personas. At one point, they were a staff member in our School for International Affairs. At a different point, they were a student, a first-year student in our, general liberal arts program. And at the same time, I was also fielding somewhat, these inquiries from bewildered librarians across campus, and our IT staff, and from vendors. So like I said, we had sort of ignored them for a while, and it started to get quiet. And then about a month later, these same sort of questions and very like urgent requests started to show up. And it was at that point I had made an assessment of this resource and decided to cancel our subscription to this database. There, as far as sort of the immediate and long-term repercussions, I think one of the good things that came out of this is that I was able to have a lot of different conversations with different parts of the sort of like library system. I got to meet a lot of library staff I wouldn't have met otherwise. And because we were so decentralized, this was a really great opportunity for me to sort of learn a little bit more about the infrastructure that's in place, and also where, who takes ultimate responsibility when these kinds of challenges happen. So the ultimate repercussion, as I mentioned, was sort of canceling our subscription. I was able to find a comparable resource that, it wasn't as like hot, but it came from a more traditional academic vendor. And while this isn't the ideal outcome, because this threat was so coordinated and relentless, the libraries were really forced into a position where we had to forego access to this resource. So in terms of some recommendations, let's see, there's a few things that I would suggest, and we can talk a little bit more about this. So protecting your IP range, that's not going to stop everybody or everything, but I think that's a good start. Being proactive, and then also taking responsibility for your collections. So, and we can talk a little bit more about that in the Q&A.
Thank you, Christina. And I'm going to go back to Juan and ask him if you had the top 3 recommendations for librarians to protect against any kind of cyber attack or cybersecurity issue, what would they be?
The top 3, that's a good one. The one that's on my top list is definitely talk to your IT, campus IT, your institution's IT, and get, I would say, get a understanding of how things are working. One of the things that I know librarians often forget is how things actually work. And there's kind of this miscommunication or this understanding. So my top one is to really understand how things work as far as who handles what. My second one is, I would say, is education. And I would say, like, learn as much as you can. I mean, a lot of times we have these conversations and librarians and people in libraries, they don't know a lot of what is going on. So I would definitely do that. And then the third one is really be proactive. Like, my recommendation is like, take everything kind of like seriously, everything, even, as Christina was mentioning before, they might have told her, well, we don't do this, or kind of like not pay attention to that. You need to kind of like pay attention and do that seriously. So I would say, have the conversation with your IT, learn as much as you can about it, and then be proactive and take things seriously. I know these are like basic things, but those are things that really help.
Okay, and I'm going to jump in here with my own experience and background is as the executive director of Ohiolink, Ohiolink runs a very large technology operation. They actually locally load content from publishers, so they actually have a bigger journal platform for use by the institutions of Ohio. It's bigger than Science Direct because it has all of Elsevier journal content on it. Lots of Wiley, lots of Springer, lots of other publishers. So it is this huge internal mirror database of journals They have a large ebook platform, and they have an open access electronic theses and dissertation platform for the entire state of Ohio, as well as other IT services, including authentication. So they, Ohiolink runs an authentication service for all of the requests from the 118 libraries that comprise that system. So one of the things that happened while I was there was the electronic theses and dissertation platform was hacked and had to come down, while no confidential data was breached and no content was taken, but it was a security compromise, and our IT infrastructure for the state of Ohio required us to bring it down and rebuild it. And that was a 6-month process. And that is a platform that graduate students were using to submit their dissertations and theses in order to graduate. So that was that was something that had to happen at speed. It was quite disruptive to 90 institutions. And after that, my organization started requiring disaster simulations. So we had to do a service continuity plan, and then we tested it with a simulated disaster. And we did that almost every 2 years. Sometimes it was a cybersecurity disaster. The entire academic network went down, for example. Once it was a tornado that destroyed the building. And once it was actually a flu pandemic that spread throughout the city of Columbus. So we learned an incredible amount during those processes of both live events, but the simulations were great. So I would say my top 3 recommendations, one of which is the same as Juan's, is definitely talk to your CIO or head of IT about any digitally dependent service issues and the need for security and collaboration and understanding what is going on. If you don't have a relationship with your CIO, you should start developing one now. The second one is upgrade your on-premises software, especially if it's open source, because older versions or unsupported versions are very, very vulnerable to this sort of attack. And carefully follow the security recommendations. If you have downloaded software from, say, if you have a local version of Easy Proxy, or you have your ILS is on premise, then definitely make sure it is upgraded and make sure that you are following the security recommendations of your software providers. And then this is one that came out of a webinar that we gave with Christina was part of that, about cybersecurity on campuses, and develop a communication plan for your staff and then test it in a simulated environment situation. For example, one of the first things that happens in a cybersecurity attack that takes out the entire campus is you can't use your campus computers. You can't use the campus email. You may not be able to use your campus phones. So everything is out. And how do you communicate with your own staff? How do you communicate with your users? So by trying to figure out what would be our alternative in this situation, you can test for the know-holes in your communication plan. Do you have everyone's home phone or personal phone? If you can't use, if the website is down and you can't use the email listservs that you depend on, does everyone know to check your Twitter account, for example? So those are my three. Talk to your CIO, upgrade all your software as quickly as you can, and develop a communication plan, because that is the first thing that is going to go wrong. So Christina, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think that, you know, being proactive and having a communication and a response plan is really helpful. I would really just re-emphasize what both you and Juan have said, and that, you know, you need to plan for the next attack, not just the one that's already happened. And I think we touched upon this, but I think it's also really important to know, to note that there isn't a one size fits all approach. There's not a universal solution that is going to work for every single institution, because every single institution's technological footprint looks a little different. So in conversation with people who run your IT departments, or your COI, you know, be diligent about training and documentation. And I think this is especially true if you have a library that relies on volunteers, students, interns, or if you contract with a third-party service to work with, you know, to do reference. There needs to be formal cybersecurity training that's in place. You know, we oftentimes libraries, we have, you know, disaster response in the event of a flood. And, you know, nowadays it's just as likely, if not more likely, that there will be a cybersecurity attack. So there's really no reason why we aren't thinking about those things now. This is sort of, I think, maybe a little more specific to my experience, but taking responsibility for content in our collections. You know, this was sort of the biggest takeaway for me during my experience, is just how powerful the information is that we sort of take for granted if we have access to it every day. And collections can make your library vulnerable, especially if it includes sensitive information about people, about you know, countries, about governments. So I keep returning to this question of whether it is the library's job to provide access to military intelligence. Or alternatively, right, like, is it the library's job to provide access to information about people who are at risk, right? So I think my answer to this is that libraries need to account for risk that's associated with their collections, and you know, be honest about that. Just because we're able to offer access to something doesn't necessarily mean that we should. So, you know, being mindful, proactive, and communicative are the big takeaways for me.
We have one a question that came in from the Q&A, and it is how to implement security for researchers so they are not plagiarized by teachers, which that's a really tricky, you know, especially open access information or anything that is publicly available on the web. It will get used, and I think that's just an education issue of this is acceptable and ethical use of material. You have to cite it if you use it. There's not really a lot of technological solutions to that. It's more of an education and attitude, best practices, educational environment. The other thing that we have a question about is, are there any recommendations for our end users, our researchers, our faculty, our students? And I'd like to just start with saying, be really careful about what you download onto your computer. I was following someone on Twitter who said that they had downloaded a browser extension, and he thought it was like unpaywall that, found you open access articles when you were searching for them. But this defaulted to Sci-Hub. And a lot of people don't know this about browser extensions. They often, especially if it's Google Chrome, they're not very well vetted by Google, for example. Almost anyone can develop a browser extension. And the way I think about it is, do you know enough about the person who developed this? Treat it almost as a job interview, because you are outsourcing work to this browser extension. Do you know who developed it? Is there enough information about who they are? Do they appear at conferences? Do you know how they're funded? And there are a lot of great browser extensions out there that are very transparent about who developed it, why, you know who they are, you could ask them actual questions and they answer you, versus a random browser extension that you don't really know where it came from. You don't know whether it installed spyware or malware on your computer. So I would say that that is one of the things that I would say is be really careful about anything you download onto your personal computer. And the more convenient and easy and problem solving it seems, the more you should look at it really carefully. So that would be one of my recommendations for anyone, library staff or end users. Christina, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Gwen, I think you make some really excellent points. And I would add too, in looking at extensions, it's so important to note that extensions do a lot of different things in order to like meet the goal of what the intended app is, right? So there are a lot of like reputable and well vetted extensions that are doing things like tracking your history and looking at the different email addresses that you visit at different times, and maybe cross-referencing that with other online databases. That is just sort of like the nature of a lot of these extensions. So making sure, like Gwen said, like that you are being a little conservative about what you choose to sort of like, I think about it sort of like going into a closet and choosing what I'm going to wear for the day when I like go out in public, right? These extensions, they follow you everywhere you go. So you want to make sure that they're, like, I don't know, in style or something. They're from a reputable producer, and like Gwen said, a lot of people that create these extensions, they're like proud of their work, right? So like they'd be happy to like answer questions that you may have about how it works. Most of them are probably like pretty nerdy about it, so they'd actually be really thrilled to get an email. Also use different passwords for different applications. I don't know enough about sort of password managers, so I can't speak one way or another about how secure those are. But I mean, yeah, using a different password for different things is a really good place to start.
And Christina, there's a question in Q&A for you that is, again, this is almost related to instead of installing a browser extension, it's going to an unknown open access journal. Should I trust in these open access journals, or should I always avoid them? And I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, that's such a great question, Jorge. Thank you. So there are indexes of open access journals. So that's what I would recommend is, if you find a good resource online, if it's a reputable journal, it will be indexed somewhere else besides Google and like that one site, right? So I would reach out to your institution and see what sort of indexes they are currently supporting that provide access to descriptions and ranking of these open access journals. If it's something that you're just finding out in the wild, there isn't necessarily anything wrong with that, but make sure that that source is being backed up by reputable libraries or institutions that you do trust.
Juan, you look like you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of go back to before about extensions. I also wanted to also mention that it's not just extensions. A lot of these mobile applications that you download, one of the things that they do is they always ask you, especially with Google, you'll notice that if you download an application, they'll ask you questions like, can we have access to your contacts? Can we have access to make phone calls, read your phone calls list? All of that information is what hackers use to kind of build this kind of hive that they develop, this structured like hive to where they have contacts and networks. And what they're doing is they're getting your contacts and then using that to target not only you, but target them. So a good example is like, let's say you download an application for your phone to edit photos. And one of the questions they'll ask is, can we have access to your contact list? And think about that when they're asking, you're like, this is just a application where I want to edit photos. Why would they have to have access to my contact list? All I'm working with is photos. So my point is like, think about what you're downloading, what questions when they ask you, can we have access to your contact list? Say, that's kind of fishy. And I also want to mention something that Kristina was talking about before, about how she was getting emails that weren't your typical phishing emails. There were canned responses, but they were more personal. That's another thing to definitely look out for, because these hackers, they will try to make these kind of conversations with people to disguise it as an email that's legitimate, to say, hey, we spoke earlier on the phone, or hey, we had lunch the other day, all of this stuff they're trying to pull. And I'll be honest, I did get an email from a colleague that had an attachment. It was a special system that we use at Syracuse. And I questioned it. And what I did was, instead of just opening it and accessing, I actually contacted my colleague and said, hey, did you actually send this to me? And he's like, yes, this is a system that we use at Syracuse, which I wasn't aware of. But it totally caught me off guard. I thought it was a completely illegitimate email. I thought it was somebody was phishing. So my point is if you do get this information, contact your colleagues and ask them, is this legit? And if it's not, make sure you contact your IT department. Even if it's like something that your IT department is on top of, just notify them. I know sometimes IT will think like, well, we don't need to be notified again and again, but I say just keep notifying them, even if it's like a phishing thing, and say, hey, I got this phishing email too. They'll appreciate it. So yeah, that's what I just kind of wanted to add.
We have two more questions, and I think we can, the one about free antivirus. Yes, that's a very good question. Is it something you've heard of? Is it something that has been recommended, for example, by a computer, a consumer computer magazine? So again, that is a really potent sort of hook, right? It's like, we're claiming to protect you, but really we're going to compromise all your information. And the last question, I think, is a really interesting one, is what is, the relationship between cybersecurity and loss of information? And I'm going to go back to what Juan just said, is a lot of times the applications or habits we have about loss of information are personal. Your phone is probably the biggest loss of information risk that you have, because we tend to give away all sorts of information about ourselves, about our locations, about our habits. and how those connect together to create either very sophisticated ways to social engineer you giving up your password or more information than you want, or just create a profile out there on the web that all kinds of companies can use to target you either as a hack or just for advertising. And I would just say, really, I am not on Facebook. And if you really want to protect yourself from loss of information about you or the influx of bad information, Facebook it's a pretty bad platform for that. So one of the things that is a standard of software development, especially on the web or companies, is if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, because it's your usage patterns and your information that is being collected by Google, by Facebook, by Twitter. And do you know how they're really using it, and can you stop them from using it? And that's a tricky balance to strike. So I'm going to share my screen. I want to thank both Juan and Christina for their participation today. I want to thank the attendees' time and attention and your questions. And I'm going to show you the last slide I have for this portion. And there's more information that we have put together in previous webinars. All of these are free to access. So one is a webinar about, it's not about the technology, CIOs talk to librarians, with a very distinguished panel of librarians from various types of institutions and CIOs talking together about access to digital resources and services. And it did touch on the need to stay in touch and privacy versus security. Christina was part of the Gone Phishing Service Continuity about a Cyber Attack webinar, which once again is freely available. And then SNSI is the Scholarly Network Security Initiative, and they have done a security summit. Juan is also a member of SNSI, and there's more information about cybersecurity and publishing and libraries in particular at that website. So that is what I have to say here. And this concludes the portion that is about cybersecurity. And now we're going on to a completely different topic, open science and open access. And once again, I really want to thank Christina and Juan for taking part in this. And Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you for a moment.
Yes, thank you. Gwen, I think that we have a very good conversation. Thank you to Juan and also Christina to share this information. I think it's very important, not only for librarians, also for users. And we have another question related, yes, about technology. We can talk about this in the meantime. I think that Patricia is mentioning about that now that technology is a day-to-day usage, it's difficult sometimes to not check or not give information, personal information, to the wrong hands. So as you mentioned, the recommendation, I think it's important, no? to review, to see what is the final use for that information. And also Salvador is mentioning here that what is the actions to avoid these cyber attacks to the institution. And I think that the main points that you mentioned in the conversation are very important. So go to there and try to avoid this cyber attack. So if you are ready, we can continue with the second topic, Wayne.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. And I'm going to share my screen again. And So this is much more of a traditional presentation. So I'm moving on to open science and open access, which is a really complex and collaborative landscape. I'm delighted to be presenting to you virtually if anyone joined just for this segment, but I really hope someday I'll have the opportunity to attend this conference in person. I also have a special guest today who represents one of Elsevier's most prominent library partnerships that assists librarians in managing data, particularly open data. And that training is available for any librarian freely. So I'm very excited to welcome Ashley Thomas today. So our planet is facing many, many challenges, as we know. There's the current global health crisis. We're also seeing a global climate crisis. And to address these challenges, we need evidence-based solutions that are based on research. And we need to collaborate even more. South America is a key player for global science, and we need all the international collaboration that we can enable. And this is essential to solve these global problems. We also need to cooperate across sectors. So academic, government, and corporate sectors all need to collaborate. And today I'm going to address the role that publishers, including Elsevier, can play to support the research ecosystem as it addresses these challenges. So let me begin with the first topic, which is managing knowledge. Technology is playing an increasingly important role in supporting both the production and consumption of knowledge. For example, 20 years ago, the center of knowledge in universities was the library. It was where researchers could browse books and find their own information. They could get expert help from the librarians. And of course, today libraries still form a very important role in the societal and cultural parts of our research ecosystem. However, the massive proliferation of technology means that the production and consumption of knowledge is increasingly disconnected from physical locations. For example, as we discussed in the previous hour, every smartphone serves effectively as a mini mobile library now, which filters and pre-digests information according to an individual's personal preferences. This proliferation of technology has resulted in a massive increase in the ability to produce as well as consume information and the associated challenges of information overload. For example, we globally produce 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. There are 3.5 billion daily searchers, not searches, but searchers on Google. And in the world of research at the end of 2018, there were 33,100 active scholarly peer-reviewed just English language journals publishing 3 million articles a year. And that has gone up since 2018. And when you consider article submissions, not publications, article submissions, of course, outstrip publication by several factors. Those submissions jumped 30% during 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you search the keyword COVID-19 in Scopus, you will get more than 66,000 document results just for 2021, and we're only about halfway through. Researchers from Mexico contributed almost 600 just OA articles in 2021 alone. In addition to information overload, there are lots of other challenges. First, information can be circulated even if it has not been subject to established quality controls, hence the rise of so-called fake news. Second, there are echo chamber effects, the selective circulation of information which support and reinforce the pre-existing beliefs of sub-communities. And the danger there is you're only looking at one side of the evidence or one side of the debate, and you're not even seeing competing or opposed information. Third, most of our news is delivered by newsfeed powered algorithms. For example, in the United States, 40% of the population receive their news from Facebook's news feed. News serving algorithms are designed to feed people with similar content. When research is taken out of context or used selectively, it can be polarizing and deliberately undermine trust in scientific evidence and the scientific process. With all these challenges, STM publishers play a critical role in upholding standards of quality and managing knowledge to engender trust in published content. Trusted research information is an important cornerstone of the scientific process and contributes to the progress of science and humanity. Maintaining a high-quality publishing process and distributing trusted content and knowledge takes significant time and effort by many parties. Publishers support this process, working in partnership with the research community in a variety of ways. The management of information is evolving now in the broader context of open science, which is the second theme of my talk today. Open science encompasses ways of working which make research more inclusive, more collaborative, and more transparent. There are several components of open science shown here as pillars: open access, open data, open metrics, research integrity and reproducibility, science and society, and they're all enabled by a range of open tools and software. Elsevier is partnering with the research community to enable open science because we believe that open science could benefit research and society and drive research performance. On the first pillar, open access, you can see that Elsevier has very rapidly accelerated its open access initiatives in the period between 2019 and now. In 2020, Elsevier published around 81,000 open access articles, up 65% compared to the previous year. Almost all of our journals offer the option to publish open access, and we've now launched around 500 fully gold open access titles. All of our journals offer a free green open access option, meaning that the accepted manuscript can be posted openly after an embargo period. A second way in which we support open access publishing is by the collaboration and partnership with publishing institutions. We now have over 17 national or individual agreements to accelerate open access. As of May 2021, we have signed more transformative agreements that have large open access components than any other publisher. These include test and learn agreements in the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Hungary, France, Sweden, Ireland, Qatar, and Switzerland, and with individual institutions, including the very recent agreement with the University of California system, University of Florida, Carnegie Mellon, and the California State University system. As these agreements come into practice, we're learning more about the best way to offer open access to individual needs and goals, enabling us to better respond to our customers' needs. A third way in which open access is being accelerated is through the posting of preprints, which are the versions of documents before they have been submitted to journals to be peer reviewed. Though review times have been significantly reduced in many ways for most publishers, there is a strong demand for even more rapid publication. And of course, we really saw that with the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're seeing an increase on the use of preprints. For example, on Elsevier's preprint platform SSRN, there have already been millions of downloads of coronavirus and infectious disease research preprints, reflecting the current desire to access emerging research findings as soon as possible. Finally, Elsevier provides tools such as Digital Commons to enable individual institutions to showcase their researchers' output in an openly accessible way. In addition, any single Elsevier journal or any published journal can improve its visibility, internationalization, and impact. For example, the Journal of Respiratory Infections published a special open access issue on COVID-19 on April 23rd, 2020. 2 articles received thousands of downloads each during that month. Readers came from 151 countries, including major hospitals and universities working directly on COVID-19, like the Centers for Disease Control, the Mayo Clinic, the National Institute for Health, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Beyond strict OA, Elsevier also supports free access to articles under different conditions for different user groups, including open archives for our Cell Press titles. All 140 titles under the Cell Press imprint are freely available after a 12-month embargo. And as a founding partner, Elsevier contributes over 1/4 of the free and low-cost peer-reviewed resources in Research for Life, encompassing Science Direct, Scopus, and Clinical Key, including over 3,100 Elsevier journals and 13,000 books. We also provide extensive in-kind expertise and financial resources to advance usage, outreach, and training, and have committed to the Research for Life program through 2025. The second pillar of open science is about open research data. We are involved in a range of incentives and initiatives to encourage researchers to archive their data and make it openly accessible. For example, we enable data sharing with our journals. This is very topic dependent. Different scientific disciplines have customs and rules about sharing data and different preferences about where that data should be deposited. Researchers are encouraged and sometimes mandated to store their research data and make it accessible and discoverable so others can reuse it. And we also support the top guidelines around the transparency and openness promotion. Elsevier is very proud to support a very important freely available resource for librarians. And I'd like to invite you to take a look at this resource, the Research Data Management Library Academy, or RDMLA. And I'm very pleased that Ashley Miller, RDMLA librarian, is here from Harvard to answer questions after the presentation about RDMLA and how it has helped thousands of librarians all over the globe get training to assist their researchers in managing data, including making sure that their data is open, preserved, and easily found. Elsevier financially supports the program, but the curriculum is developed under the leadership of Harvard Countway Library and Simmons University, and the instructors are from a variety of institutions with expertise in various aspects of research data management. So it was created in order to give libraries all over the world the skills and expertise to help their own research teams. It can also be used by researchers that want to know more about RDM and how to manage their own data. And again, it is part of what we see across many libraries of librarians creating new roles and support for their institutions as we all, as a profession, move into a different environment. The success metrics to date, as of yesterday, there were more than 5,000 active students. There are discussion forums where practitioners and students can interact with each other and the instructions. There are 415 who have chosen to complete badges, and there is a continuing education certificate available, and 41 people have taken that option. They are from all over the world. Most of them come from North America, Europe, and Asia, but you can see that there are increasing numbers of students from Central America and South America. It is on the Canvas network. Again, this is freely accessible. It is under a Creative Commons license, and there are currently 11 units. And Ashley can answer your questions more at the end of this session about what they are, how you can take them, and RDMLA's plans for the future. It has been used in all sorts of ways all around the world. They've used it as librarians have used it as a professional development course and workshop for their staff. They list it in their live guides or research guides. They have blogged about it, and they have also incorporated it into iSchool or LIS coursework and classroom learning. So we would like you very much to help spread the word about this resource. Again, Elsevier financially supports it, but it is run by a team of librarians from Harvard, Countway Library, and Simmons. And the information is there. And again, at the end of this, I will introduce Ashley Thomas, and she can answer your questions about using this resource and the training it provides. So the third pillar of open science is open metrics, which is about the availability of indicators that inform decision-making in research, such as decisions to promote researchers or how to evaluate the impact of funding programs. Elsevier has long supported the responsible use of metrics and indicators in the assessment of research. We established the International Center for the Study of Research, or ICSR, to work in partnership with the research community to help develop our collective approach to research assessment. It's vital that we work together to apply the same high standards of evidence to the evaluation of research as scientists apply in their own work. Elsevier has also signed the Leiden Manifesto and the Declaration on Research Assessment, or DORA. As a signatory to DORA, we make the reference lists for all articles published in Elsevier journals openly available via Crossref so they can be available for reuse. This means other important initiatives like I4OC or the Initiative for Open Citations can draw on this metadata. As part of this initiative, Elsevier recently launched the Icsr Lab, which provides access to rich data sets and our computational platform for researchers whose work is aligned with ICSR's mission. Do you or your researchers have a research idea that requires computing over a large amount of publication metadata or researcher profiles? For exploratory projects, replication studies, or when developing new research metrics and indicators, Icsr Lab supports such scholarly research by giving access at no cost to powerful research metadata and metrics. If you or your researchers are interested in using Icsr Lab resources, please contact us. The data available includes full publication metadata from Scopus, including authors' affiliation, language information, open access status, DOI, subject codes, and more. Scopus abstracts, including affiliation details and author profiles, and the ability to conduct studies of author gender following the methodology used in Elsevier's Gender Report 2020. That it also includes metadata for selected preprints from 2017 onwards. Citations encompassing PlumX also is included in these data sets. So citations encompassing traditional citations, as well as, for example, clinical citation counts, captures such as forks and followers on GitHub, readers on Mendeley and SSRN, mentions including blog mentions, comments on various platforms and Wikipedia references, and social media, including Twitter and Facebook interactions. So if you're interested in this, I'll have slides at the end that have URLs where you can go for more information and how to contact Icsr Lab. The fourth pillar of open science pertains to research integrity and reproducibility to ensure that research is conducted in ways that are discoverable, citable, comprehensible, and reproducible. To this end, Elsevier has launched a number of initiatives such as Data in Brief, which allows researchers to describe and share their underlying data. Methods X, which allows researchers to describe the methodology that they're using and how they have come to their results. Hardware X describes the hardware underlying the research, and Software X and Software Impacts describe software behind the research. All of these research elements help researchers by giving a more comprehensive picture of the work they are doing across disciplines so that other researchers can reuse that work and in turn help make research more reproducible. The fifth pillar is connecting science and society. From reading research to discussing the latest breakthroughs, fostering a greater connection between science, medicine, and technology with society can help identify and solve society's challenges faster. We play a role in this process by making sure that trusted content is communicated and translated for both specialized and broad audiences. Elsevier works with partners promoting science literacy and research integrity while making efforts to tackle unconscious bias in the publishing process. To this last point, I want to showcase a recent metric that was introduced in February 2021 on the public pages for 600 Elsevier journal titles. These journals will now display the self-reported data about editors' gender to support openness and increase inclusion and diversity in this space. The data is from internal Elsevier data in our editorial management system, which at the moment only captures editor information at the individual journal, but also at the Elsevier journal portfolio subject level, allowing a benchmark. Expanding this level of public transparency will not only raise awareness of the gender balance across Elsevier's journals, but also show that we are committed to working with our partners to build more inclusive research and health ecosystems. This example is taken from the Journal of Surgical Research, and you can see that for that journal, 46% of the editors have self-identified as women, as opposed to the benchmark across the neuroscience journal portfolio, where only 30% of the editors are women. Frank Norman, librarian at the Francis Crick Institute in the UK, who's an expert on scholarly communications and open access, asked on Twitter, "This is a good first step. I wonder when they will tackle other diversity dimensions." The answer is Elsevier is tackling it now. We are participating in a multi-publisher initiative to capture self-reported race and ethnicity data, and again, this is self-reported, in order to produce actionable insights into diversity and equity in the global publishing process. If you're interested in this topic, there's information at the end of this presentation. I presented with a colleague of mine, and you can view the recorded presentation on this topic. Pillar 6 is open tools and software that support all the goals of open science, such as facilitating collaboration within and beyond research communities. Mendeley is an example of such a tool. It is a free reference manager that helps researchers discover, organize, annotate, share, and cite research, and it also helps them archive their data openly for free. Scopus is also enhancing its involvement in research data and aiding the reproducibility of data by starting a new collaboration with Data Search to provide links to specific documents. Elsevier, like other STM publishers, supports the entire journal ecosystem in a variety of ways at a very large scale. We participate in clocks and Portico so that scholarly content is properly digitally preserved. We manage and filter over 2.5 million article submissions per year, including organizing and supporting the editors and peer reviewers who provide the scholarly expertise. And I just want to take a moment to point out that a lot of hidden work goes into the enormous amount of article submissions that all journals take in versus the ones that are actually published, and the amount of organization and support that it takes to support 24,000 editors, 90,000 editorial board members, and organizing the work of 1.4 million peer reviewers. The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated many of these trends to a degree that none of us could have anticipated. We've seen a massive increase in the supply of and demand for preprints and the deployment of text mining and machine learning to interpret the ever-growing corpus of content. We're seeing researchers collaborating virtually to an unprecedented degree. And we're seeing publishers making COVID-19 content and tools openly accessible and mineable. Like other publishers, Elsevier launched a dedicated and free-to-read coronavirus information center, including research articles, tools, and platforms. Part of the content was also translated into Mandarin. The benefits to research that the pandemic has revealed are clear. Researchers focusing quickly to address a key societal challenge and collaborating to an unprecedented degree, governments and funders freeing up money to support it, publishers supporting with the provision of quality, trusted information and tools, and society receiving treatments and preventative vaccines at a truly astonishing timeline. And trust in research is thus further strengthened. There are many complexities in supporting open access and open science, and there is not one size fits all solutions for all researchers, all institutions, and all countries and regions. Elsevier is taking a test and learn approach that is adaptive and responsive to its stakeholders' needs and goals. Librarians know none better that much of the skilled work they do and are paid for is invisible to their patrons and stakeholders. And the better librarians are at providing this work, the more invisible that work can be in a digital environment. There are substantial investments that libraries make in the infrastructure supporting the provision of content, and some of that monetary investment doesn't come directly from the library, but includes building and facilities, staffing support outside the library in terms of procurement, legal support, IT support, general software support, etc. Even when patrons understand that resources don't appear on their office computers or in their home for free, they tend to think that the work and the infrastructure is easy to supply or could be done more cheaply or better or in a less complicated way without understanding the entire ecosystem. And again, as a librarian, I have heard those things said about, how hard can it be to put a book on the shelf? Well, it's hard, as the librarians in the audience knows. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of expertise. Just like there are costs to providing access and content to your own end users, there are costs of open access, and they go far beyond the individual production of a single article by a single researcher. For example, consider the difference in supporting a single physical library for a limited number of patrons in a limited geographical area in the print universe and everything that involves. Not just collections, but librarians' care of the physical infrastructure, modes of access, software, customer support, training, and help for using the resource, for example. Now consider the costs of supporting professional and digital infrastructure for many of the same activities at a global level for millions of authors and users 24/7 at a complex level of organizing the work of others worldwide, which many different modes of publishing currently does. There's a famous quote about software development and digital projects. Fast, cheap, good, pick two, meaning you can only achieve two at a time. From my perspective, there's still much to consider about the true total cost of the provision of high quality, trusted information and services at a global scale. The active collaboration between researchers, librarians, and publishers displayed in such partnerships such as RDMLA, ICSR and ICSR Labs, and different modes of provisioning open access and open science will be necessary to move science forward at the scale and rapidity that is necessary in today's information environment. The question is, how can these benefits be sustained in a post-pandemic era, and how the imperative to take rapid action can be balanced with the need for quality assurance and sustainability of trusted delivery and economic models. As we consider the future, a quotation from Voltaire comes to mind. It is said that the present is pregnant with the future. And the science fiction author William Gibson said in the same vein, the future is already here, it's just not very evenly distributed. These quotes indicate that the current trends that we already see in open science, both their enabling pillars and their resulting outcomes, are indicative of what the future will look like. While traction in each pillar is generally at an early stage, adoption of all pillars is gaining traction and will continue. Publishers, including Elsevier, are already supporting a more inclusive, collaborative, and transparent research ecosystem and will continue to do so. Regarding inclusivity, there will be more options for researchers to share more kinds of research outputs than ever before. We will support a more open and inclusive research experience through our journals, tools, and platforms. Regarding collaboration, there will be more platforms and partnerships that facilitate collaboration. We will help bring other stakeholders, including the public, into the world of research. Regarding transparency, the bar will continue to be raised on reproducibility as researchers increasingly share their methods and data, and we gain more complete insights into the research performance and the entire research workflow. As for Elsevier's role, we will continue to support and enable open science in all respects, helping pave the way for a more inclusive, collaborative, and transparent future, and we look forward to working with you as we do so. And now I'd like to introduce my special guest, Ashley Thomas, who is here to answer any questions you have about the Research Data Management Librarian Academy. She is the RDMLA librarian at the Countway Library at Harvard Medical School and is responsible for the management and maintenance of the course site. She's the main point of contact for RDML learners, and she assists in the design and implementation of new course content. She's an alumna of Simmons University's Dual Archives Management and History degree program, and her research interests include data and digital preservation, and specifically the inherent challenges of born digital materials. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and check in with Laura to see if there are any open questions. And if not, we'll go directly to Ashley and she can talk a little more about RDMLA.
We can remember to all the attendees that it's open, the question and answer service, so you can put your questions over there, and we can start with Ashley, if you agree, in the meantime that we have some questions from attendees.
Ashley, would you tell a little more about the RDMLA and how it has benefited librarians in their continuing education?
Yes, thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and answer your questions. So RDMLA was developed back in 2018, and it was a collaboration of librarians from research institutions, so Harvard, Tufts University, Boston University, and they came together to fill a gap in research data management learning needs for librarians. And so we created the RDMLA, and each unit focuses on an element of RDM that librarians either have in their everyday work life, or that might come up if they're establishing an RDM program at their library. So we have the basics from like Unit 1, which is just the foundations of research data management. We go into establishing RDM programs at libraries, project management. We look at some technical tools like R, Python. We also look at platform tools such as Scopus, but also completely blanking on some of the platforms, Figshare, and other free open programs like that. And then we've added new units last year, yes, 2020, that utilize the Data One training tools. Data One is an excellent resource, and we're very proud to have connected and partnered with them. We also look at data archiving and research data, what was this? Copyright licensing and privacy, sorry. We're introducing mini modules starting this summer. So a mini module is, they discuss timely topics. So the first one that we're going to have is about the National Institute of Health's new data sharing policy, which will go into force in 2023. So we have individuals from NIH, from the National Library of Medicine, and then also a librarian from Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, to talk about not only what the policy is, but also how it differs from other funding policies, and then also how librarians can start instituting those changes into their RDM practice. But we're also translating the course into Chinese. We have a partnership with National Taiwan University that will be launching soon. So we're just looking for ways to approach and answer librarians' RDM questions, to make sure that they have the tools and the skills to provide good assistance to their patrons, to their researchers. And we're looking to make connections worldwide, because this is not just a situation that librarians deal with in the US. It's every librarian in a research institution has to deal with RDM. So that's my little spiel.
Hi, Ashley. I have a question about, is there specific information related to how many people from Latin North, I think is the question, or Latin America are associated with RDMLA? I remember the map, but is there any more information you can share about this particular region?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I don't have those numbers up, but I can get them. We don't have a lot from Central America, and but I know Mexico is fairly well represented, and we're having a growing number of learners from South America, both in the Spanish speaking, but also the Portuguese speaking portion of the continent. And where is my enrollment? That might not be the right one. Sorry, I have so many statistics. And let's see, last time we looked.
And while you're looking, I just want to mention that RDMLA launched only in October of 2019. Is that correct, Thomas? Thomas, I'm looking at your name, Ashley. There's been an incredible growth and interest in this, and really what's only been about 18, 19 months. And so the more people know about it globally, the more learners, participate.
Yeah, so it looks like we have 93, this is slightly older, so the number will be up a little bit. 93 learners from Brazil, Mexico, we have 42. I saw somebody was looking for kind of more of the Caribbean. Let's see, how I can do this. Let me filter by
So while she's looking, are there any other questions about any of the presentation that we can answer for you?
Yeah, so we have learners from Argentina, the Bahamas, Belize, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Haiti, Honduras, Jamaica, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Puerto Rico, St. Lucia, Trinidad and Tobago, Uruguay, Venezuela.
And do you have any sense? I want to emphasize this is, even though there's librarian in the title, it is for any professional who's trying to learn about managing research data. Do you have any sense of how many are librarians versus other sorts of data managers?
Yeah, so primarily we get librarians, but so they make up, I would say, probably a good 80 to 90% of our learners. They're either working librarians, librarians who are just entering the field, librarians who are maybe doing a subject change. But there are a number of people who aren't librarians. I've actually had a number of emails that have reached out and they've asked, I'm not a librarian. How can this help me? And actually, it can still provide some good information. So the foundations of RDM, which is Unit 1, just describes what research data management is. What is data? What can you do with it? Why do you need to save it? How do you make it reproducible? Then also there's the project management, which is just good knowledge for anybody who is in any way involved in a project. There's also the technical units, such as we're looking at R and Tableau, which is good for data visualization. We also have an introduction to Python and Jupyter notebooks, which yes, some librarians use, but a lot of time that's more research. Researchers use it more. And then also for our platform tools, where to store your data when you have it for a project. Where can you find more data to maybe include into your data sets? So it's not every unit is going to be applicable to a non-librarian, but there are definitely good foundation units for researchers, for non-librarians. And actually, I should probably put together a little paragraph on our website, which really clarifies, if you're not a librarian, RDMLA can still help you check out these units that are applicable regardless of your subject matter.
And I see another question, Laura.
Yeah, related about the language that you mainly use. I don't know, it's mainly English, because you mentioned something about Portuguese, but it's related to the attendees, right? The person that are associated to that, some of them are a Portuguese speaker, right?
Yeah, so it is English. And unfortunately, we, for the most part, all of our instructors are from the Northeast part of the United States. So unfortunately, it is all in English. We just have noticed that trending, we've had a lot more Spanish and Portuguese speakers joining the course, and I know we've had questions, you know, if we can make it accessible in another language, maybe someday. But so right now it's all in English. When you're in Canvas, like the navigation, you can switch it to your preferred language. But we also have all of the video transcripts. You can download them. So if you need to, my Spanish is very poor, but I can, when I read it, I can kind of follow along a little bit better. So if you're like me and can maybe read the English a little bit better, or you can copy and paste it into a translator, that's an option. So we try to make it accessible, understanding that not everyone is a native English speaker. And that is something that we're very aware of, and we're doing what we can to help make it a little bit easier to utilize the course where we can.
And also, do you want to talk about that you did form a part talking about collaboration to make things more accessible? You just recently collaborated to get the modules translated into Chinese.
Yes, so we formed a partnership with National Taiwan University in Taipei, Taiwan. One of our leaders, Dr. Rong Tang, she actually has some connection there. And she was approached by the University Librarian of NTU at a professional organization. I think it was ASIST back in 2018, and about translating. And we were able to form that partnership. It's really unique in that we're both kind of coming at it, no extra resources. We're both taking on, you know, our individual work, and we're getting close. We should have that available, I think October. But it's been a year-long process of tediously, NTU gets all the files for a unit. They do their translation work, and then it gets sent to our translation team. We're fortunate that Dr. Tang and then also our project assistant, Zhang Hu, both speak Chinese. They're native Chinese speakers. So they're able to go through, double check the translation, point out any, you know, any like mistranslations or awkward phrasing. We have a big meeting with both teams. We resolve those issues, and then we start the process all over again. So this has definitely been kind of our trial run. What's involved in a translation? Who do we need? And, you know, maybe someday something will happen to where we can expand those services. But yeah, we were very thrilled to have that international partnership. Definitely would like to have more. So like I said, we want to create a global community of practice, and we can only do that when we start reaching out and making partnerships globally.
Yes, of course. And also I think that the more that we promote and the more people that are involved from Latin America, North and South, I think the more you can open these options, right? So thank you very much about that.
You're welcome.
So thank you so much, Ashley, and thank you to the attendees for your time and attention and your questions. And now I'm going to turn it over to Laura to wrap up.
Thank you very much, Wayne. I think that we are very glad to have all of you here. We really thank for the topics. I think that it was a very interesting conversation about cyber attack and open access. Remember to all the attendees that if you have more questions, maybe here, maybe when you are out of this and you stay in some situation, remember that you can contact us in our social media. Now I can remember what is our social media, but obviously thank to Wayne, all the collaboration. Thank to Christina, Juan, and Ashley. I don't know if you want to say something at the end, close the session we are closing. And I don't know if you want to add anything else, any of the participants, any of our guests.
I think Juan and Christina are still with us. I'm sort of surprised.
Yes, they are here. So if they want to add something, we are very glad. If not, in the meantime, I can remember to all the participants that they will receive an email with the instructions from us in order to get the certificate. And I can say that, well, we don't have a lot of questions here, but we have a lot of message about the presentation, excellent topic to start talking about in the region from different universities. So I think that we can thank to all of you that this information, I think it's important for the region. It's something that we are promoting also, and I think that we can go deeper in that, because at the end it's something that it's important for our institutions to take care and to know, and to especially to identify the difference between open access, open science, and this type of concepts that are new also for us, that are developing in the institutions, also in the companies. So very glad to have you here. I don't know if we are ready. I don't know if Juan it's available. If not, don't worry, Christina.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Christina. I'll start. Thank you everyone for having me. I have to go to another meeting. I have a meeting, but yes, thank you so much. This was great. Thank you for letting me present. I learned a lot too, actually, from my colleague panelists, and thank you. And like I said, the biggest thing is being proactive when it comes to cybersecurity. And you have my contact information through SNSI. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always willing to answer any questions or anything anyone might have. Thank you again.
I'd just like to say I'm thrilled. I'm so honored that I was asked, and this has been a real pleasure. I'm very grateful to my co-panelists. So I look forward to seeing you next year, actually.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. And I'm signing off now. Good afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. You can contact in our social media. So thank you for joining, and thank you for all the panelists, and thank you for being here. We will see you in the next session next Tuesday. Thank you very much.